it's a lot easier to engage in activities that aren't intrinsically rewarding if they're linked to something that you really find important, because you don't want to fall too far down a hole, that's for sure. One of the things that we've learned as clinicians say is that when you help people overcome anxiety, it isn't that you make them less anxious necessarily when you're young and your life is ahead of you. That's the last time that you need to be nihilistic and cynical. You can tell that when you drink, you get alert and let's say more enthusiastic and energetic, and then you don't want to stop drinking. That's definitely a bad sign with regards to developing alcoholism. You go out voluntarily and start to confront the things you're afraid of. So for example, if you're afraid of the mall, maybe you go to the parking lot and you look at the mall, and then you walk close to the door and you look inside, and then you go home, because that's enough for one day. But you do progressive exposure, and that's one of the basic rules of psychotherapy, is that if you're afraid of something, you progressively and voluntarily expose yourself to it. And that generally, it's the voluntary exposure that's curative, right? You'll find that you get braver and you learn that you can tolerate the fear. And as each person reflects the entire crowd back to you, I don't think that that'll be the biggest problem that you'll face. Break it down into small steps and then practice each step until you're bored with the step. And when you're bored with it, that means you're no longer anxious about it. And don't quit. Stick at it, because it's really useful to overcome a fear. And once you've identified a fear, then you've identified something to overcome that can definitely make you stronger. There was a kid years ago at the University of Texas at Austin who climbed up on the tower there and shot a number of people with a high-powered rifle, and he had a fast-growing tumor on his hypothalamus and had reported these being overcome with extreme feelings of rage. You tend to saw off the branch that you're sitting on a regular basis. I would repeat what I said earlier. I think that one of the things that you do if you're high in anxiety is to stabilize your sleep-wake cycles. So get up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, and eat at the same time. Make sure that you eat breakfast, and a big breakfast too, that's heavy on fat and protein. It isn't obvious why things grip you and shake you like a rat, I guess there's something about that seems to be associated with what people used to call destiny. Thugger-strike. I've heard depressed people who stopped antidepressants said they never helped in the first place. What do you say to that, Mr. Peterson? Hey, that's certainly possible. Antidepressants don't necessarily work for everyone. My personal opinion is that antidepressants work quite well for many people whose lives are in decent order. So they have friends, they have family that love them, they have a career, they're educated approximately to the level of their intelligence, they have things to look forward to. But for some reason their mood is extremely distorted and negative. And I've seen antidepressants have miraculous effects on people like that. I think they're less likely to work when people have a plethora of life problems, which isn't exactly the same thing as being depressed. Having a terrible life is not the same thing as being depressed, although the two can overlap. And it isn't obvious to me that people who, maybe they have a drinking problem or a drug abuse problem and they're unemployed and they have a pathological family and their friends aren't good for them and, they have a string of failures behind them and they don't have much to look forward to in the future and all that. It's a lot for an antidepressant to overcome, but under those circumstances, maybe the antidepressants can help stave off feelings of like suicidal feelings and that sort of thing. But antidepressants don't work for everyone. But some people they work really well for, and if you're depressed, they're definitely worth a try. In a month if they're going to work. Also, there are a variety of different kinds of antidepressants, and you have to figure out dose, and you have to figure out when you should take them during the day, and you have to figure out type. So they're not a cure, they're a tool for helping control negative emotion, and they can be very effective. So, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people that they didn't help. So that's what I would say about that. Seaman Eric says, apologies for the weird question. Have you ever performed a ritual sacrifice? No, I haven't. And it is a weird question, although I can understand why you would ask it. I've seen people go from being afraid to strike up to have a conversation with a friend in a coffee shop, like have a panic attack thinking about that, to actually doing stand-up comedy. So you need at least 90 minutes a week to think about where you want things to be going in the medium to long term. I've found many times in my life that you have to be aware of what you are judgmental about. Imagine that you're designing your schedule so that you can have the life you want. Just start with that, and be easy on yourself to begin with. You'll get better at it. You can add more responsibilities as you practice. I think that Adderall is an amphetamine. It is addictive. It can sensitize you to other dopamine agonists. So I would generally say it's something to be avoided. You also want to really watch it in combination with marijuana, for example, or psychedelics, because you can get unlucky and trigger a psychotic episode. And go do the future authoring program. That's a good start. And you'll have to learn how to schedule your time and how to get up at the same time every day. And it's going to be a real struggle. Walk through your fears.